Welcome back to the Packet Lab. Today we're going to take a look at displaying connected users on a Cisco device, and we're going to accomplish this with the show users command, which is a command that you're going to use all the time out in the field. The show users command, as you can see, doesn't have a whole lot to it. This slide's pretty sparse. The command itself is show users, and it's going to display information about the active lines on a router, and you can use this in either user exec or privileged exec mode. So regardless of what privilege level you're in, this command will be available. It's going to show you the line number, the connection name, idle time, host, terminal location. We'll see all this in action in the next slide and on the CLI as well. One thing to note is that the asterisk that precedes a line, that's going to show you the current terminal session. And again, this is more easily explained when we see it in action on the CLI. And here we can see what the show users output looks like. And we issue the show users command. In this case, we're in privileged exec mode. This will work in user exec mode. And you can see it has a line, the username, the host, the idle time, and then the location that the user has logged in from. And we'll go through these in a little more detail in the next slide. And I've got a note here. The idle time means the length of time that the user is gone without interacting with the CLI. He hasn't issued a command or even hit enter. And you can see the idle time up here. What you want to avoid confusion with is that this is different than the total amount of time that the user has been connected to the device. And I've heard people say that before, that you can look at this and say, oh, this user's only been connected for 4 seconds, or these guys just got on. That's not true. This is how long they've gone without issuing a command, sending communications to this device. And we can see that in action here. I've issued the show users command. I piped it. I just wanted to see the line so I could see the fields, and then I just wanted to see the user that's actually on VTY line 0. And so in this case, it's user router 2. He's coming in from this IP address, and here the idle time is 26 seconds. So this means that it's been 26 seconds since he's issued a command, even hit enter. It does not mean that he's only been logged on to this router for 26 seconds. To see how long he's been logged on, you can go and show line and then specify this line. In this case, it's VTY line 0. This will give you a buttload of output. In this case, I just wanted to get the portion of the output that showed the activation, and time since activation is 5 minutes and 32 seconds. So this guy's been logged on to your device for 5 minutes and 32 seconds. It's just that for the last 26 seconds, he's been viewing porn or something. He's not doing any CLI action. So I just include this just so you don't confuse these two values. One last time, this is the idle time, and this is the actual total amount of time that he's been logged into your device. There are a couple of arguments with the show users command. The only one I'm going to really go into is the show users all. In this case, show users all obviously has been issued from the command line. And what you can see here is that with the show users command, it's just showing you the lines that are actively being used. With the show users all, it shows you all the available lines. And here you can see we have the console line. We've got 2 TTY lines, we've got the auxiliary line, and then we've got our 5 VTY lines, 0 through 4. This is kind of nice because it shows you all the available lines. The stuff that's in red is the additional output. Doesn't tell you much because nobody's connected on there. So if we were to issue show users and not put the all in there, we would see everything except the output in red. This table shows us the fields for the show users output. And to make this a little easier to follow along, I'm actually going to bring up a router, and we're on router 1 here, so that we can follow along while we go through these. So the first field is a line, and I will do a show users. There you go. So you can see here's a line. And this is actually made up of 3 subfields. I'm going to skip the first subfield, which is the absolute line number. We'll come back to that in just a second. So the second subfield here is this con VTY. And actually for this example, I'm going to do show users all. Again, if you remember back to that slide, this shows all the lines, regardless of whether they're in use or not. And scroll up just a little bit here so we can capture all of this, or most of it. And this makes it a lot easier because we're going to see all the different lines. So CON is con, which is the console port. TTY is a quote-unquote asynchronous terminal port. There's 2 TTY lines on this router for some reason. AUX is short for auxiliary port, and then VTY are your virtual terminal lines, and you should have 5 of those, 0 through 4. Again, that depends on the platform and the iOS that you're running, how many VTY lines, also whether you've gone in and configured some. Which brings us to the next field, which is the relative line number within the type. So in this case, console, this is the line 0. I mean, it goes 0 through X. So this is the first console line. You're only going to have a console line 0. You're only going to have an auxiliary line 0. And then the TTYs, well, they start from 1. And then your VTY lines, again, 0 through 4. So VT line 1, 0, 1, 2. That's pretty easy to understand. So now if we go back to this first subfield, it's the absolute line number. By default, I can't remember the exact number, but a router can have I think it's 180 lines. And the way that the router keeps track of the lines is with this absolute line number. So you can consider the second and third subfields here is basically an alias. So the router says, this user is connected on line 0. Line 0 means it's been assigned to console line 0. It's easier to show with the VTY lines. So in this case, the router says this guy's connected to line 98. That line is basically mapped to virtual terminal line 0. So you're connecting to VTY line 0, but the router looks at this as absolute line 98. So what you can do is you can actually add VTY lines. So by default, again, depending on your platform, switches I think go 0 through 15. But in this case, generally on a router, it's VTY lines 0 through 4 are by default, but we can add, VTY line 5 through 20 if we want. And most likely, if we did that, it would get mapped to the absolute line of 103, and that would be VTY line 5, 104, blah, blah, blah. So that's the difference between the absolute line and the VTY line. Okay, moving right along, we'll just go and show users. For this next bit, the user, that's just going to be pretty self-explanatory. It's the user that's logged in. So here you see that we're logged in as packetlab, router 2 and router 3. In this case, on the console line, if you haven't specified the user login with a username password, this might be blank. Just by default, you hit enter. If you're connected to the console line, you get into the CLI. In that case, you would not see a name here, so don't be surprised if you see that with the console line. Okay, the next field is host. Let's come back to that one because it's a subtle difference between another field that we're going to show here. Idle time, we'll also come back to that because I want to show you something on the command line, but we did touch on that in the last slide. Location, either the hardwired location for the line, ignore that, we're not using that, or if there's an incoming connection, the host from which the incoming connection came. So in this case, we can see here that this connection on VTY line 1 came in from 10.1.13.3, which is router 3. In this case, DNS is working on the router. I've assigned the IP address for router 2, the name r2.packetlab.com, just to show you that you might see either an IP address or a domain name there. Anyways, the important bit is to know that the location is where the user is coming in from. So let's hop back to the host field. So whereas location is the IP address or the domain name where the user is coming in from, host is where the user is going to. In this case, we're going to telnet to ourselves. The IP address on the serial line on this router is 10.1.12.1. Well, there's a 13.1 as well, but we're going to telnet to ourselves. Log in with packetlab. If I can type, damn it. Why do I do that? Okay, and now let's go ahead and issue the show users command again. And so now we were connected on the console line. We were logged in as packetlab, and what we've done is we've created an outgoing connection. In this case, basically a loop. We're telnetting out the serial line and back into itself on this IP address. I hope I haven't confused you guys with that, but I did want to show you that in this case, you can see the user that's on console line 0 with the username packetlab. Host field means that this is where he is now connected to. So he's basically daisy chained. He's connected to this router, then he daisy chained out to another router, which in this case is kind of recursive because we're going to ourselves. So we can see here that this is us. We're on router 1. We are telnetted to ourselves. And the way we could tell this is that the asterisk shows you the active session. So we're actually on console line 0. Then we telnetted out, came in VTY line 0, authenticated with packetlab. And this location is our own location, but it's, again, we've basically looped. So hopefully I didn't confuse you too much with this, but it was just to show you the example that the host is the outgoing connection, whereas the location is the incoming location.